listening to the podcast Advertising Playbook, your resource to better understand and execute successful podcast ad campaigns. Hello and welcome to the podcast Advertising Playbook. I'm your host, Heather Osgood, and you are listening to episode 3 in a mini-series masterclass on how to buy podcast advertising. If you have not listened to episodes 1 and 2, which would have been the past 2 weeks, please do go back and listen to those episodes. The first one, we talk about goal setting and how important it is to create a plan before you get started in your campaign. Last week, we talked about targeting the right person so that you get the results that you're looking for. So if you haven't listened to those, I would recommend that you go back and check those out. Today, we're going to be discussing talking points and calls to action. So when you think about putting together a campaign, it's important to make sure that you reach your customer with the right message, right? Messaging is so vital and so important. As really just a matter of function for this episode, we are going to be relying more heavily on the host-read ad. Last episode, I talked a lot about programmatic advertising, the values that are there. But if you are doing programmatic advertising, you're going to obviously need to have that creative, and you're going to need to produce an ad. And oftentimes, that is something that you're working with a creative agency on. Host-read ads are very different, right? Because instead of working with a creative agency, you're working with an individual host. And that can be wonderful in so many ways, but it can also be a challenge, right? Because these folks that are going to be reading your ads are not seasoned marketers. They don't know everything about marketing and how to put together a good read. So it's important to make sure that you're partnering with a company that is going to work with the host to make sure the ad read is created well. So that would be one recommendation that I would have for you out the gate is make sure that the host is getting the information that they need and that they're working with a rep firm or a network that can provide that information for them. When we create host-read ads, we give them what we call talking points, which is what should this host say in this ad that you're creating? Because it isn't scripted. We don't want it to be scripted. We would like it to be as loose and open and organic as possible. And so what that means is that we're going to tell them what we want them to say. We're going to tell them if we want them to talk more about the history of the company, or if we want them to talk about a specific product that we're highlighting, right? You have to tell that host what you want them to say. So it's important to make sure that you're clear as a company, of course, on your unique selling proposition and what makes your product the best that it can be. And then make sure that you're having that host communicate that to the audience with, of course, their spin in their voice in what is going to resonate with their audience. But you have to get really clear on what your unique selling proposition is. And then you need to communicate it to the host in a way that they can digest. One of the recommendations that I would have is to get really concise with your talking points. I have found over the years that advertisers that can provide really concise talking points have better ad reads, and the hosts love them so much more than advertisers that send 6 pages of talking points, because there's a level of discernment that happens with the host when you give them a ton of verbiage, right? It's like if you just overwhelm them with, this is when the company was founded, and these are our core values, and this is why we're a better company, and these are our 50 products that we like. That's too much information. And the host is going to have to go through all of that, and they're going to have to decide what they should pick out. And if it's difficult for them to decide what to say, who knows if they're going to say what you want them to say. So be concise with your talking points. The other thing to consider is that typically podcast ads are purchased in 30 and 60-second increments. Most of the time, hosts do go over that, right? It's very common, I would say, for them to go over it. However, Just because they're going to go over it doesn't mean you should give them tons and tons. You want it to be a 60-second ad read. And if it's not a 60-second ad read, then we have issues, right? So really consider that when you are giving them talking points. How much can a person actually say, and how can they best communicate your message? So it's really important to be clear on your talking points and to be concise on your talking points, because the talking points will really create the type of ad read that you get. Next, I really wanted to address the call to action and what it means to create a call to action. First and foremost, I really would like to address the idea that if you want to create a direct response campaign, you have to be in a business where you can discount your product to some degree. The reason that we can motivate people to purchase something quickly is because we are putting out a compelling offer to make them decide to buy this product. And I have certainly worked with companies with podcast advertising where they are a high dollar amount and they are a non-discounting type of company. And there is nothing wrong with that. We all know that there are luxury brands out there. We expect to pay more for luxury brands. We don't expect them to be on sale. We're not looking to get a good deal. We're buying that product because of that product for whatever reason, whether it's the prestige, whether it's the quality, whether it's the need, right? There are all kinds of different reasons why people will pay a premium amount for a product. If you are a premium product, it is very difficult to create a direct response campaign because it's hard to come up with something that is going to motivate people to take quick action. Part of the reason people take quick action is because they feel like there is that, sense of potential loss, that if I wait, I'm not going to get as good a deal on this product, or I'm not going to get something that I want. Now, certainly if you're a luxury brand and you want to do a call to action that includes supplemental products, that could be an option, right? So maybe instead of giving a discount or providing free shipping or doing whatever your call to action is going to be, perhaps it's an upgrade, perhaps it's additional product. Those sorts of things can work well, but it's really, you have to know your brand. You have to know your brand and you have to know your client. You have to know who you are trying to reach, and then realize that direct response has to go hand in hand with some kind of motivator that gets people to take action quickly, because that's the name of the game, right? We're trying to get people to take action quickly. You're looking at your advertising campaign and you're saying, hey, when I run these ads, I don't want people to think of us. I don't want people to like us. I want people to buy things, right? Like that's the goal of this campaign, is getting people to buy things. And so what does that look like? If you have a call to action on your website that is better than the call to action in your advertising, and you're expecting people to remember a promo code and then go to your website and they're going to get a pop-up, whether it's a wheel or whether it's a deal or whether it's a something, right? And you expect them to remember this certain code instead of just saying, yeah, I'm going to click here and get 10% off, or yeah, I'm going to click here and get half off my first order, or whatever it is, right? People are going to they're going to follow the path of least resistance, right? That's an important factor for us to consider when we're putting these campaigns together. People will follow that path of least resistance. And so if you make things too complicated for them, you're not going to get the results that you're looking for, because you've not made it easy for them to actually remember to use that code, or to make it different enough to remember to use that code. And I think that we have to consider, what the call to action actually really is for this individual person, and how is it impacted by, this particular form of advertising? Are we saying we're going to choose a specific calls to action for podcasting, and it's going to be a different call to action on social media, and it's going to be a different pop-up on our website? And you will have your own internal strategy about how you feel like you want to execute that best. But just consider that, right? Because the call to action is the piece. It's called action for a reason, right? It's the piece that's going to get people to actually get up and buy the product that you're trying to sell them. So it's a crucial part of that campaign. The other thing that is hard, and it's always hard when we're trying to put a mirror up and look at ourselves. We're never very good at this, but you do have to look at your overall buying process, right? If it's difficult for people to buy products, then they're not going to buy as many. And if it's really important to you that this is a direct response campaign, and it's really important that you see good conversions from it, and yet your mobile site doesn't always work well, or it's, clunky. Those are the types of things that are going to be a resistance point for someone and cause them not to purchase from you. And, podcast advertising can do a lot of amazing things, but at the end of the day, the brand is still responsible for their own path to purchasing, right? They're responsible for their own conversions. We can drive traffic to people's sites, we can drive traffic to people's products, but we can't walk them through that buying process. We can't walk them through that buying cycle, right? You as the brand are responsible for that. So as you're putting your campaign together, make sure that you're considering all of these elements. And I know as a marketer that these are things that you're thinking about probably 24/7 anyways, but they all play so much into the success of the overall campaign. So as you're thinking through the process, make sure that you're thinking through how can you position your company best, and also what does it look like to have essentially an ambassador talk about your product, right? Because when you're partnering with a podcast host to do ad reads, you are literally getting an ambassador for your product. We know that word of mouth advertising works well, and there's a reason, right? It's because someone you know, like, and trust is telling you to purchase a product. And it's the same way with podcast advertising. But we have to equip that host with all of the tools so that the campaign can succeed. And so just to kind of recap, my recommendation is to create strong talking points that clearly communicate your unique selling proposition, that highlight the product that you want to sell, right? If you've got 50, 100 products, make sure you're talking about the one you want to sell, and then have a really strong call to action, because that strong call to action could be the difference between you seeing success and not seeing success. I hope that this has been helpful. We've got one more episode left. In our final episode, we're going to be talking about actually tracking the results from your campaign to know if you're getting the results that you're looking for. And yeah, thank you for listening so much. I appreciate it. And I will see you on the next episode. Thank you for listening to the Podcast to Advertising Playbook, your source to a better understanding of the podcast to advertising industry.